Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe and
I'm Mike Rice.
And today we are talking about the midway point of the CPL season. It's already upon us. Incredibly, We're halfway through the season. It's time's flown by, Mike. We've seen so many goals, so many matches, so many great moments, so many questionable moments. Lots to discuss, but we're already at the halfway point of the season. And this past weekend, we were treated to even more goals, even more closely contested ties, some controversy as always, and some screamers as well. So we have
some good goals.
Exactly. We're spoiled for choice a bit for this weekend, Mike. But before we dive into it all, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on YouTube under the same name to see the visual side of the podcast. Now let's start up. We're going to go chronologically. Let's start off with the big one of the weekend, I think we can say. Atletico Ottawa against their title rivals, Forge FC. Now going into this match, obviously, Atletico Ottawa and Forge were having good momentum, having beaten their respective opponents in the Canadian Championship. Both of them are in the top spots of the CPL. Forge is still undefeated and continues. Amazingly halfway through the season, undefeated in the season. And as is sort of tradition in these kinds of top-of-the-table matches, it can be a very cagey affair, not a high-scoring, not super end-to-end. But to be fair, in this result, it ended 1-1, but there were chances for even more goals. It really did come down to some really, really good defensive displays, some fantastic goalkeeping from both keepers, and just a couple of missed chances here and there. But let's talk about Forge because they took the lead early.
Yes,
Kyle Becker, who else but Mr. Forge, Mr. CPL himself, after
the ageless Kyle Becker.
The ageless Kyle Becker. That's back-to-back games he scored now after his stutter against Montreal, the winner there. And took a goal really well. And then afterwards, obviously, Ottawa were going to go and try to respond and try to get some opportunities. But Forge did a really, really smart thing, and specifically Bobby, where he showed once again how versatile he can be. We mentioned in the last episode that Bobby, in the game against Montreal, changed things up and allowed Montreal to have more of the ball, which is sort of unforged-like because they like to dominate possession. In this way, instead of changing the sort of philosophy, they changed the shape of the team, and they actually matched up with Ottawa in terms of having three center backs and the two wing backs, with Peyton as the left back, who's usually not a left back. He's usually a midfielder, to my understanding. But because of this, it meant that usually Ottawa loved to attack on the wings. They were more limited today because of the sort of back three with the two wing backs, especially when the two wing backs came back to defend. It didn't allow for those overloads out wide and the kind of space that Ottawa liked to exploit. And you could tell very quickly that as much as Ottawa were trying to respond to going down and going behind early, Forge were really, really well structured and stopping them. And that's why Ottawa had to wait a long time for them to find a goal.
Yeah, it was so hard for players like David Rodriguez and Tablo especially, and we didn't see as much as we usually would have, like Aparicio getting forward, because they just weren't finding spaces. And like when you see them pick up the ball, like they would drift out wide, but Forge was so strong down the middle, like there was no way in. They'd go down one side, have to go back, go into the middle, go across to the other side, back. Like there was no way through. And I mean, the stats don't really tell the same story. I mean, Ottawa having 23 shots on goal, but they're all from a long way out, where it was just frustration because they're just struggling to really get into the box at all. I mean, Abatne had a really great shot, which really tested Kalila, and that was like really good save. But I think it's Kozlovsky had two in quick succession that went high and wide, and it was just lots of frustration from Ottawa in this one, where they just couldn't get into the box. And Salter was doing a lot of his best work defending and running back, and getting rather annoyed with the numbers in his way. So yeah, it was really interesting to see how frustrated Ottawa were getting up against Forge in this.
Yeah, and I think Forge also were probably frustrated a bit that they weren't able to extend their lead. Like I mentioned at the beginning, both goalkeepers were really, really strong. Koilalat was standing on his head in that first half, made massive saves. The one that sticks out to me, I think, is like Sam Salter had a brilliant chance. I think Cloutier, had another big chance as well towards the end of the first half.
Cloutier have the header.
I think it might have been him that had the header, yeah. And no, it was Corey. It was Corey.
Oh yeah, when he came on, yeah. So,
yeah, it was Corey. Not Cloutier. Yeah, you're right. It was Corey. And Courtelat did really well, but Nathan Ingham also made some massive saves on Kyle Becker, especially denying him a second one. Actually, if you look at the stats, like there were 8 big chances according to FootMob, and 7 of them were missed, and partially because of bad finishing, but also mostly because of some fantastic goalkeeping. But yeah, Forge held on to the lead through so long, very much until essentially like towards the end of the game, added time, and the last gasp penalty equalizer. But there's a couple of standouts for me from Forge and their ability to kind of maintain Ottawa at a distance, and one of them was Yevremovic. Came in, obviously, off of unfortunate circumstances with Forge having 2 injuries within, I think, like 7 minutes after the half hour or something like that. Kadeem came and Malik Oluwabu-Bello, both of them, I think, came off injured, got some treatment, and I think both of them had to come off quite quickly afterwards.
Yeah.
But Yevremovic kind of stepped in this kind of weird formation and did really well defensively and attacking. Was on the left side and was constantly a thorn in the side of Ottawa. Had a brilliant shot that I think was saved, and it just really showed the strength that Forge had off the bench, and they're also their ability to adapt, because, like I mentioned, two of your starting players are out after just about half an hour. You have to shift things around. And they stayed organized, they stayed focused, and they managed to, hold that lead for about as long as they physically could have.
Yeah, it was really difficult. Obviously, they've played 3 games in this week as well. And those injuries really hampered, I think, what they were planning on doing going into the second half. It's taking up those 2 substitute windows, and just left with 1 for the rest of the game, like in that second half. So I had to throw the dice and make a big switch up of players with 3 subs coming on at once. I imagine maybe they would have looked to do something slightly different in the second half to try and get that second goal. But yeah, the difficulties, the guys, the amount of work they've been having to do, the amount of travel, it really did. I mean, it's really is the only sort of for 92 minutes anyway. It was the only bad thing about their game was these 2 injuries out of just non-contact ones as well, which just it often comes from when the schedule gets a bit busier.
Yeah, and I don't know the extent of the injuries to the 2 players, so I have no idea if, especially with non-contact injuries, those are the ones that are always the scariest, because you worry about, is it just a sort of a cramp situation, maybe pulled muscle, or is it, a ligament or a tear and something like that? Those are always some of the most, just kind of ominous injuries. So hopefully the 2 players are fine, Kadeem came and Oluwabi-Bello, especially considering how young they are. But yeah, it kind of comes with when you're playing so many games. But Ottawa, to their credit, as much as they were sort of being nullified, they kept going. They had plenty of chances. And in the end, it came to a silly decision by Reza Rama to try to do a bicycle kick as an Ottawa player. I forget who exactly it was that
Yeah,
went
yeah.
for the header, but basically got Rezat Rama's boot to the chest
Mm.
in a very, very clear penalty. And then, obviously upstepped Balu Tabla and dispatched his penalty to make it 1-1 after 93
Mm.
minutes. Looking across at both games, Mike, would you say it's a fair result? Or do you think that it was a bit harsh on Ford to not come away with the 3 points?
Yeah, I think it's kind of harsh on them because it's just a crazy decision from Rama to give Ottawa a chance because, like I said, like they really made it hard for them and really frustrated them. I think it was Coulange that got kicked by Rama, who looked quite exciting when he came on the left foot.
Oh yeah, you're right.
White
You're right.
play, a great little run into the box just before that as well. But yeah, it's just for 92 minutes, Forge were just perfect, almost in the way they were playing, just to really deal with Ottawa away from home as well. So I think Forge will feel like there's points lost more than Ottawa will think there are points lost for them.
That's very true. And I think when you also look at the table, the fact that Forge have now sort of lost that ability to jump up above Ottawa and now stay behind in second by a single point.
Hmm.
Obviously, going to be a bit frustrating for them to have missed that opportunity. But like Ottawa also had chances, also had many chances to equalize, and they didn't. But it wasn't like it was one way traffic necessarily. So yes, probably Forge will be the more frustrated of the two sides, but I think Ottawa did as much as they could, especially given the tactical shift that Bobby kind of, spurned on them in the last minutes by switching to that three at the back. I'll be curious to see if Bobby continues to kind of show this kind of versatility in the matches to come, because previously it was like doesn't matter who you're facing. Forge was always going to play this kind of 4-3-3 possession heavy positional play kind of style. But now in the last couple of games, we've seen them be able to change their tactics a bit for the better. And that kind of adaptation has allowed them to have some, good results. If it wasn't for that silly penalty, it would have been a massive 3 points
Yeah.
against the league leaders. So yeah, I'm curious to see if because of this positive trend, we're going to see Bobby continue to tinker with the identity and the tactics in the weeks to come. But now let's move on to the second match of the match day, and that was Pacific FC against Halifax. And this was one of the two 5-goal thrillers that we
Yeah.
got on the weekend. This one went the favor of Pacific with a 3-2 victory over Halifax. And it was the Yann Toulay show in Langford in this one. From out of nowhere, Toulay seemingly comes in and gets 4 goals in his last 2 matches, including a hat trick in this one. And it must be such a breath of fresh air for Pacific fans and Pacific staff and the other players to see someone taking the reins and putting the ball into the back of the net. The last time they saw something like this was Moses Dyer in his second half loan last season. We haven't really seen it since. So it's great for somebody to be able to, at least for a short while, we'll see if it can last more than just a couple games. They kind of step up and start banging some goals in. Because before it was really only Marco Bustos who was bringing energy into attack, and he hasn't scored at all this season. He's only been providing assists. I think he recorded his 3rd assist of the season in this game for Toulay. But Toulay was good right off the bat. He was involved. He was getting into spaces, demanding the ball, connecting well with players. He was the busybody. He reminded me a bit of like Adonijah Reed when he was at Pacific, that liked to, go all across the pitch, kind of pick up the ball, pass it, progress it. It felt like that. But Toulay, in this instance, what he added to that Reed was missing at times was that end product. And I don't know where it necessarily came from, but it was really, really well done. Obviously, with the first goal. Got a bit lucky, got a miss kick with his right foot that set him up really nicely for the
exactly
left foot. But you got to still, whatever happens, you got to be there to put the opportunity away, and he did that, even if there was a little bit of luck. And from there, you could sort of see Pacific start to get a little bit more confidence. It's like, hey, we finally put one away. We last game we scored 4. This game we can score more, and it kind of felt like they had a little bit of that confidence going into it. Obviously, that was disrupted because of Halifax and their 2 goals, but it was a strong start from Pacific, and it had a confidence that I hadn't seen from them in a long, long time.
Yeah, definitely, because we've said so many times watching Pacific, they just don't look dynamic enough, and Bustos is there bringing energy, but a lot of the other players are either a little bit too static, or they're not making the best runs that they could do. They're not finding the spaces. They're quite soft with their passing at times. But yeah, this getting Bustos and Toulay getting into different positions around the pitch, and the speed at which they're doing things as well. It's not just the fact that they're getting there; they're doing it quickly, and they're making defenders. They're not giving them the time to work out who's following who's marking who when he moves into this area, and that's why he got all that space for the first goal, and he's pouncing on the deflections in the box for his second one after the shots were blocked a few times after Yesley came bizarrely running out the ball, and it was all a bit chaotic in that one. But yeah. getting players who were being a bit more taking the game by the scruff of their neck, and I thought it was fantastic when he got his third one running over to the side of the pitch, and there's Toulay sits on the back, and there's a policeman just taking a photo. He's like, obviously knows he's not going to have much work to do in this game, so I'll just watch the match.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Yeah, no, I was impressed with Pacific. They changed their shape in the Canadian Championship match, or not the Canadian Championship, their last match that they had, and they had, I think they went into like a sort of like a 5-2-3 or a 3-4-3 kind of scenario that worked really well. It allowed them to have a lot more space out wide, similar to what Ottawa was sort of doing. I wonder if James Merriman kind of saw what was working really well for Ottawa and tried to replicate that a bit with his own team. Because it did sort of feel like, especially with Caden Chung on the right in the kind of back 3, back 5 that they had, he was finding a lot more space. Mukumbilo was holding it down a bit more defensively, so Toulay was able to find more space. The midfield of Browning, Lagerfeld, and Daniels did well, I think, and attacking wise, especially when you have Aiden Daniels, who's more of an attacking midfielder, only really having one defensive midfielder in that kind of middle 2 is always going to be a bit risky. And I think we saw the drawbacks of that in Halifax's second goal, where it was a breakaway after a chance that Pacific had to score. They went right back the other way in a counterattack. They didn't really have many defensive midfielder players, like defensive players in the second row of pressure to kind of stop this breakaway. And then Coimbra did really well to find Johan Bai, who did a clever finish. So I think, every formation, there's going to be positives and negatives. This one had that we saw sort of the drawback, but overall, I think this formation change to this kind of like 3-4-3 was really positive from Pacific. And the fact that they've scored 7 goals in the last 2 games with it will show that there is promise. But of course, they've also conceded 6 in their last 2 games with it. So there's definitely some balancing issues that need to be found in this formation. But overall, I was quite impressed.
Yeah, I think it stops like this because you haven't really got a striker. Montajanes played there, obviously. In this one, Josh Hurd more playing as like the more central player, but you haven't really got that. You haven't got a Coimbra or a Salter like on this specific roster. So getting Bustos and Toulay off of the wings and letting them find spaces and roam a bit more, using, like you say, Chung and Mukambiwa in this one as the wide players, it means that centre forward isn't completely isolated and up against 2 or 3 centre backs, while the wide players just throw in balls, or they have to try and cut in, and often running into traffic. So just finding different spaces there, and I think that's what's made it a little bit more difficult for teams to like defend against them, because looking at these different areas, they're not quite as predictable as they were.
Yeah, exactly. And then, looking at Halifax, they went a goal behind, but had a really good response, scored 2 goals inside 5 minutes. And it was Thiago Coimbra who was the star of the show on that side of the pitch.
Yes.
For Halifax. Did really well on the first goal. Don't know what Ali and Dunn was really doing with his marking on that one. It felt like he just came right across Ali and Dunn and just won the header. Those two had a little bit of a fight going on throughout the match, which I enjoyed. They were both kind of leaning on each other, battling for balls. Just proper like physicality between the two, which I really enjoyed. But in that case, Coimbra got the better of Ndum, and then like I mentioned, the second, a nice poke outside of the boot. I thought initially it was a bit too wide, and he messed up the opportunity. But credit to Johan Bai. Chipped the keeper, really tidy finish from a player who we know is of that quality. We haven't really seen it all that much, maybe because he hasn't started too many games, but he is of that caliber, having played in France. So really good response from Halifax, but then afterwards we got a response again through Toulay in the 42nd minute to bring it back level. And I felt so bad for Alessandro Biello. Such a young kid there doing his best, and made 2 really good stops. After the corner kind of bounced in. The first one on Bustos, blocked it. Second one on Hurd, used it, stuck out his foot, blocked it. But he couldn't do anything about the third, and that was Yann Toulay just rifling it into the roof of the net, giving Pacific back on level points there. And just the first half was just like end to end, which was so nice to watch as a neutral, but also like just the fact that both teams were really going for it, I think was what I really enjoyed watching that match.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to see a little Sean Reyes, a little bit of skill and bursting forward, because sometimes you can drift out of matches and you can have sort of little quiet phases. Obviously, like same with Probo as well. Things like that. But that was classic Sean Reyes.
It was, and with Coimbra, I felt bad because he had such a great match and he had a chance to equalize after Pacific, won a penalty. I think it was a clear penalty. I don't think there's any really complaints about the penalty itself. But Coimbra had an open header. I don't know if the sun got in his eye, but he was about 2 yards off the line.
It was it from the block? Was it like a cross that was blocked and it was looping, wasn't it? So maybe misjudged the flight of the ball a bit, or the pace of the ball.
Maybe we'll give him the benefit of that, but it looked like a horrible miss. But it should have been his brace. It should have been 3-3 after Toulay secured his hat trick with that penalty third goal. But in the end, Pacific saw it through and won the match 3-2. Coimbra did come off injured around the 70-something minutes, but apparently it was a cramp. Also, it was absolutely baking in BC this past weekend. We're talking like 30, feels like 35. So it looked like he just ran out of gas after giving it his all and came out with a cramp, I believe is what I read. So hopefully shouldn't be too serious, especially how important he is for them. But really, really good match overall between the two sides. I'm glad that we got all the action in the first half, because I think the second half the players were just toast from the heat and the heat exhaustion. So I'm so glad we got 5 goals out of there. There was another match that we'll talk about in BC that got affected, and we didn't get to see as many goals or any goals at all for that matter. So I'm glad we got to see at least one in BC. But now let's talk about York United against Valour FC. Now, both teams, and similar to Forge and Atletico, both teams come in with good performances in the Can Champ, but ultimately did not achieve the results that they wanted. And it was about how do they build on this for the league. Now, this one, again, another 3-2 thriller, another 5-goal thriller in this one. And once again, the home side takes it in York United. But it was actually Valour that started us off with Keanu Williams, scored a really, really well taken goal for Valour. And I know we know we're big fans of Keanu Williams, but it's so nice to see him back on the pitch and being productive. And it's not even just necessarily the goal, but just every time that he plays, every time he gets the ball, it feels like he can create something, which is something that I don't think we've really seen all that much from many Valour players this year and even last year while he was injured.
Yeah, no, this is a big need for him, Valour. They've got players with like individual quality. I've really enjoyed Diogo Rizal, and Figueiredo can make something happen, but yeah, no one does it with any regularity. It's always quite sporadic when those bits of quality come, and he's just so direct with what he wants to do. Like, he's just if he can see even the faintest possibility of taking on a player or getting a shot away, he does it, and that's always fun for anyone to when they're watching football.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like with a match like that, Valour are able to start well, but then they go on and do the Valour thing where they start really well and it looks like they can do something, but when it comes to the ends of halves, specifically the ends of both halves, they just switch off. They just switch off, and incredibly, if you look at the actual timings, if you don't count halftime, they conceded 3 goals in 6 minutes.
Yeah.
In the 46th minute, technically the first minute of added time in the first half, the 49th minute, again, 4 minutes into added time, and then at the start of the second half in the 42nd minute. So 2 goals conceded in the first half. And I guess we can talk about the penalty and the penalty call, because I think Adonijah Reed, who had a fantastic game, sold everyone with that penalty call. Looking back on the replay, I don't think Viscosi touched him at all, but he knew exactly when and how to fall to make it seem like he did. And unfortunately for Viscosi and for Valour, neither the assistant referee nor the main referee caught the simulation, and so the referee just pointed to the spot and gave York United that lifeline. It's unfortunate for Valour. There have been many times, I think, this season where it's their own mistakes that are the reason why they can see goals in bad times. This one, you could argue, yes, why is Reed able to go basically in behind like that? But the call itself was incorrect, and so you can feel hard done for Valour in conceding that, and especially when they have a player like Altobelli, who is just on fire this season, steps up.
Wasn't gonna
miss. Good penalty. Viscosi did get a hand on it. I don't know if are we harsh and we say he should have done better, or is it just a really good penalty?
I think he's stretched as far as he can. I think he's got fingertips to it, but when they hit it with pace, it's going there. Yeah, won't be too harsh on him. At least he got close. Plenty of other bits to be harsh on Viscosi for usually, but
yeah, at least on that one. Maybe you have a more case to be harsh on him in the second one with the Stefan Yates goal. It was a little bit comedic how it went through. I think even Phil Dos Santos mentioned afterwards that you couldn't script it, how everything kind of came about. In the end, it was Viscosi that kind of spilled the ball, didn't save them, but put it back into a dangerous area, and then Stefan Yates came through, scored. I think took a boot or something or an elbow to his shin because he didn't even celebrate afterwards. He was rolling on.
Didn't seem that bad from watching, but I'm not the one that got the contact. But
exactly, but just like that, within 3 minutes of added time, Valour go from being 1-0 in front going into halftime to 2-1 down going into halftime. And they always say conceding right before halftime is the worst time to concede because it just throws the whole plan, the whole halftime talk, the whole tactics talk and everything right out the window because it completely turns the match on its head. And I feel for Phil Dos Santos too, because what do you say? He probably had a whole speech in mind for halftime on like, let's stay solid, let's hold on to the 1-0, let's see if we can get a second, yada yada yada, and just like that, now you're going at halftime, lose it.
Very difficult. But yeah, when you see your team play so well, and then when this happens, and the fact that it's not the first time, you're just banging your head against the wall.
Genuinely. And he must have been doing that even more, given that he went into the half having to make up his halftime talk, but it still probably was like, we still are in this. It's only 2-1. Like there's a chance, there's opportunity. Let's regroup. Let's stay strong. Let's start off well. And then within 2 minutes of the second half, boom, the third goal goes in. Kembo Kibato, who again for me has been one of York's best players so far this season. Just he's kind of doing a little bit of what Toulay was doing for Pacific, just all over the pitch, asking for the ball, using his dribbling. He's quite quick on the ball. He's agile. He's nifty with it when he's in tight corners and tight spaces. Did really well to kind of create the chance. Cross goes in. Adonai Ajareed at the back post, who had a brilliant game as well. I think those two have been really coming into their own for York United in recent weeks, which is why we're seeing sort of an uptick in their form at the back post. Should have probably not had that chance necessarily to head it on that easily.
No.
Questions asked of Temi Antonoglu there?
Yeah, there. And I think, I mean, when you look back at the goals as well, like in the end of the first half, his players coming across to his side, and he's not exactly putting in a big shift to cover their runs. I don't think this was a particularly good game for Antonoglu, who was fantastic last year. He's obviously a great player, but today wasn't. Well, this match definitely wasn't for him. And I mean, as an he's not he's not a tall guy. And to win, and the fact that he just wasn't even competing the header, he's just trying to shield the run of Reed. I wasn't sure what he was doing, but you've just, in that situation, you've just got to like try and take control and try and win the header. You can't start turning your back and trying to make it harder for him to get there. I think he's really just a poor decision, and I think Reed seemed as surprised as everyone else that he scored with his head. Celebration.
Yeah, I don't think he believed it either. But York scored that, went 3-1. At that point, you're thinking that's done and dusted for Valour. But credit to Valour, they had a little bit of fight back. Miles Morgan, who, BC fans will be familiar with because of his time with WFC2, came up with this screamer in this match, probably goal of the week. The ball is bouncing in front of him, and he just takes 2 seconds to turn and hit it on the volley. Just curls perfectly into the top corner, and it's a stunning finish from a player that I think we'll probably see a bit more of, especially with Valour in need of under 21. I think we're going to start to see him more. But I mean, if he scores goals like that, whether or not he's under 21 or not won't matter. As long as he puts the balls in the back of the net, he's going to get his pick.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we're going to start seeing with Valour, the players that they can use. They've only used 3 players that count for that, and Kelsey Egwu can only count towards 1,000. I think it's only towards 1,000 minutes, isn't it? Because he's on loan. So Miles Morgan and Eric Pop are the only other 2 that have even seen the pitch. So yeah, I think one of the difficulties Valour are going to have is, like Kean Williams is doing fantastically up front, but the only other U21 players you got a centre forward, so that's going to move him out into a different position possibly. And then as the season goes on, they have to do the little changes around to meet that requirement. So it's always one that's quite frustrating when teams don't really make the most of it and try and get young players in throughout the season rather than leaving it so long.
Yeah. And it allows opportunities for players like Miles Morgan to get more game time if they manage it better. And so hopefully we get to see him be able to get involved more as time goes on. But yeah, it was too little too late in the end for Valour. York almost got a fourth.
Yeah.
Thanks to Batar almost steals that goal of the match or goal of the week title from Miles Morgan with a effort from halfway, just goes over the bar. But outside of that, not much else in that match. And York United will be very, very happy with that 3-2 win. Puts them in a stronger position in that fifth place. Now 6 points ahead of Pacific on level games. And, they're probably going to start looking to maybe try to close the gap to Cavalry because transitioning into the next game, Vancouver Cavalry, the last one, Cavalry have been in a tiny bit, maybe you can say, a small bit of a slump as of late. They are now 7 points behind Atletico Ottawa. They were doing so well in the season. They were also undefeated like Forge up until the end of last month. A 2-0 loss at home to Ottawa. Then they got kicked out of the Canadian Championship, like we talked about in our episode last Tuesday. And then against the same opponent, Vancouver FC, have to contend with another draw. I think that's their third or fourth draw with Vancouver FC this season, which I know for them they'll be very disappointed. Yeah, fourth draw. They're going to be disappointed given that Vancouver FC haven't been fantastic. They're bottom of the table right now. Mike, should we be concerned a bit about Cavalry and their title defense? Because they were held to a goalless draw in this match. Nicolas Mosquita got a red card around the 60th minute. They had half an hour with a man up. But they just lacked a little bit of bite in the match. They had opportunities, but none of them were really taken with any certainty, with any sharpness. And they have to end up going away with a point when they should have arguably taken all three.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's worrying signs. I mean, this isn't like a meltdown and the team's going to miss out on the playoffs kind of thing. But it's the fact that these are the reigning champions and they're just struggling to really make something of matches so often. They don't seem to, like you say, have that bite in the forward line. They're just a little bit predictable. They are making chances, but if you watch back at the highlights and you see the opportunities coming, you're also thinking, oh, they'll make, as that chance will go through. It's like, oh, it's created a decent opportunity, but I'm not confident that they're going to put it away. There's just something about them at the moment where they've lost that ability to get in the final third, and you think each time you're on the edge of the seat going, okay, this could be a goal, this could be a goal. At the moment, you just you don't get that feeling with them. And going back to what you said about Bobby at the beginning, just making tinkering and finding new ways of beating teams. I think Cavalry just come a bit stale. They've been waiting for players like Gutierrez to come back and things like that, but they've come back and we're still playing the same way and still having the same problems. So maybe there needs to be something in this team. They need to start doing something to make themselves that more formidable team that people are worried to go up against. They've lost some of that fear factor that they would usually have.
Yeah, and I think it's especially shows in the attack. In this little slump that they're going through right now. They only have one goal in these 3 games, and it was that freak goal from Mihail Gerasimenkov in the Canadian Championship that bounced back off of Aidan O'Connor. It was funny because Vancouver almost had their own sort of freak goal in this match. I guess you could say their biggest opportunity when Elijah shot it, went off a Cavalry player, and like completely just curled seemingly towards the near post if it wasn't for Carducci being quick on it, but almost snuck in for the second free goal in consecutive matches between these two. But had that gone in and had Vancouver, held on to that, it would be a massive, massive loss for Cavalry, especially given that they are the reigning, Shield champs. They want to be near the top of the table. Luckily for them, it's only halfway through the season, but teams like Ottawa and Forge don't really seem like they're stopping anytime soon in the form they're in, which is going to be their biggest concern right now. And yes, they have a game in hand, so they can switch it. They can narrow the gap to, I believe, 4 points to Ottawa. So it's not like they're forgotten now as potential Shield champions. But they're, like you mentioned, you just gotta maybe switch things up, try some new things, trying to keep it fresh. That's always the not the issue, but kind of the puzzle that coaches need to do in the CPL in the back half of games, and the second half of especially is okay. We've played each team twice, home and away. They know what to expect of us. Now, how do we switch things up slightly to kind of get the edge on the opposition? And I think, especially right now, for given the form that Cavalry's in for this next 12 match days, or 14 match days rather, they're going to have to figure out ways to keep things fresh, because title defenses are difficult for a reason. They always say winning the first one is easy, staying champs is the hard part. So unless you're Forge FC, who love to be in and around those conversations,
exactly,
it is quite difficult to stay on top. But I also wanted to talk about the biggest moment, I guess, of the match, which was Nicolas Mosquita's red card. We were talking about how Vancouver needed these players that they've brought in to be fit and healthy and available, like Mosquita, like O'Connor, like Ndiaye, like Batista. And here we go yet again. Vancouver FC get a straight red card. And I'm sure fans will be frustrated. I'm sure Afshin Ghabi will be frustrated. But I kind of do feel for Nicolas Mosquita, because he's not someone, let's say, for example, like Vasco Fry, who's sort of known for rough tackles, late tackles, and stuff like that. And in this one, looking back on it in the replay, which is obviously a benefit that we have as viewers, it didn't really seem like he knew all that much about Eric Kobsa's slide coming in. It looked like he was looking at the ball, and then he got caught up in the slide, and his boot came up as he was with the forward momentum, caught Kobsa on the thigh, and then obviously Kobsa was quite hurt from it. And there was that manner of discussion between the fourth official and the referee, and they decided to give it a red card. I don't know about you, but for me, it felt quite harsh on Mosquita, because it really didn't feel like he knew all that much about the slide coming in.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, especially when it happens right in front of the dugout. So straight away, there's the outcry from the Cavalry bench of screaming and shouting. The referee's obviously not noticed. I don't think it's either he didn't notice or he didn't at first think it was anything, because he was ready to carry on. And I guess the fourth official must really believe it's a red card, and whether we think it is or not, I was quite pleased that fourth official was actually doing something other than just bringing on some, because there's so often we sit there and watch and we go, the referee can't see everything, he hasn't got replays, so the four of them need to do something. It can't just be the one with the whistle. And they've made this decision as a group. I think even if Mosquita doesn't really notice that the cops is coming, when you do, even if you accidentally stamp on someone, I think it's usually going to be a red anyway, isn't it? I think half the time it's when a player gets injured like that, it's quite hard for the referee to say, "Oh, it's only an accident," and because the other team will go crazy and you can lose the game. But yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure myself. I'm not. I kind of thought it was a red in the one I was watching, but now you say that, yeah, yes, because it took like 3 replays before you even got to see like the
That's
top
true.
half of Mosquito in it. Like, so I wasn't
Yeah.
really aware of where his eyes were or what he was watching.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, in the heat of the moment, when in real time, when you only get one chance at it, it does
Yeah.
look a little bit bad on Mosquito. So I can sort of understand why the
Mm.
referee in the end went for the red card. But outside of that red card, Vancouver played actually quite well in the
Yeah.
match. I think defensively, especially in the first half, Kunle Luke once again showed how important he can be for the side, both offensively and defensively. Alan Enyu, who has had a bit of a rough and tumble time with
Yeah.
Vancouver FC, hit and
Yeah.
miss at times, seemed to hit in this particular match, make some big stops as well. In the second half, even a man down, Callum Irving kind of kept them in it with some big saves, but the defense just looked a lot more structured
Mm.
in this match. And, I think one of the biggest reasons for that is Aidan O'Connor
Yeah.
coming in, the American from New York Red Bulls. He's just seemed to have brought a bit more stability into the defense, and because Alan Enyu can sometimes be erratic, by pushing him more out wide and having a more stable presence in O'Connor to pair alongside Campagna seems to have
Mm.
really worked in terms of the defense, and the fact that Enyu can kind of tuck in if they switch to a back three when Luke flies forward. It just feels more balanced for Vancouver, and that's how it was in the last game against Cavalry, where they brought it to penalties and won, and that's the same thing today. And even though they didn't score, and there's still questions about their goal scoring, especially because what's going on with what's his name, Alejandro Diaz.
Mm.
There's a situation there, you know, Pate and Yaya Pate has moments, but hasn't really like proven to me yet, at least personally, that he can be a top quality striker.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
nevertheless, I think overall Vancouver can be pretty happy considering who they're facing and the
Yeah.
fact that they were, for a third of the match, a man down, happy with the result.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I think, yeah, O'Connor's been huge. I think they've kind of made like, I think Ashton Gotby's made life a little bit more simple for his team with like how they're being set up to play as well. So it's they're just relying on this defensive stability and like the speed of Elijah Barr, and I mean, in the eyes, Pate's got a bit of pace about him as well, and it's just hitting teams on the break when you can. Just making it that little bit more simple for them just seems to just make them a little bit more structured. Like they're aware of their jobs and know what they're doing. And you've got some players who have got a little bit of freedom to do a little bit more going forward. And when you're a team struggling, you've got to start conceding less and then try to score more as the season goes on. I think that's what we're seeing with Vancouver. They're trying to get themselves a little bit more organised and then try and little by little increase their sort of quality going forward.
Yeah, I think that's in the end what Vancouver are going to need to do, especially given that there's a rock bottom of the table, and they are now, I think, 10 points behind York United.
Yeah.
Frankly, I mean, I might turn around and say that this was a silly take. This might bite me in the butt later down the season. But, at this point, it kind of seems like they're completely out of the race.
Mm.
You never know, just a string of 3-4 results can quickly push you up the table because of the relative size of the league. But unless Vancouver really start turning it on in the second half of the season, I struggle to see them being able to catch up York United. But if they want to have any chance, they need to continue to find that balance between the defense and the attack. Obviously, get some more goals, but I think for now, Vancouver FC just have to go and build game by game until somebody slips up and they get into some good form, and you never know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who knows what will happen? Players' injuries, drops of form in the like York, and if they can catch up, it'll be huge. It'll be very
player
surprising.
Transfers as well. If they bring in some players,
yeah,
in the secondary transfer window that can get them a bit more goals and the like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 8 points from 14 games. Valour and Vancouver it's pretty dreadful.
Yeah,
3 wins between them.
Yeah,
14 matches each. Like it's it's been dreadful for long periods, especially defensively Valour even worse. But it's this is going to be a second half of the season. The frustration thing is with the CPL is like you can try and improve things throughout and think of planning for next year, but the amount of players that will leave and new players that come back, you're starting from scratch next year with teams like Valour and Vancouver.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's always tough. But they just have to see how the rest of the season goes to see what they can improve on in the season and obviously for next year, because they still have to prove that they are a playoff worthy team. That's something that they have been yet to prove throughout their history so far, and it looks like it might be another year that we have to wait for it, but we'll see. But that is all for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow us once again on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, so you can give us your thoughts on this week's episode and how you've fared throughout the season so far at this halfway point. We're going to continue to cover as much as we can, and looking forward to the second half of the season, Mike. Hopefully it brings us as many thrills and spills and goals as the first half did. But until next time, I'm Felipe Vallejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.